Using his freedom of speech to its fullest extent, it's John James and Freedom's Pep Rally. Now, America's friendliest host, your buddy, John James.
My next guest here, or actually my first guest this morning, former Colorado Representative Ted Harvey. He is the chairman of the Committee to Defeat the President PAC. Ted joins me now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am wonderful. Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Wait just a minute here. Oh, there we go. Are we set? There we go. Hi, how are you? Yeah,
I am great. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's great having you here, sir. I appreciate it. And now you're a former Colorado state senator.
Yep.
And you're a Republican.
Yes.
And did you start this PAC, the Committee to Defeat the President? And tell us a little of the history of it and what it's all about.
Well, we actually started in 2013 as the Stop Hillary PAC. Our goal was to make sure that Hillary Clinton never stepped foot in the White House again. It was before she even announced she was going to run for the office, but we knew the Democrats were going to do everything they could to lie, cheat, and steal and make sure she was the first female president ever. And little did I know that they would literally lie, cheat, and steal and get the FBI and the CIA and the NSA to be involved in stealing the election for her. But regardless, Donald Trump still won. And I think that our PAC played a pretty significant role in making sure that happened. And then the next day, when you saw the Democrats literally rioting on the streets all across America, we changed the name of our PAC to the Committee to Defend the President. And for 4 years, we were one of the largest pro-Trump PACs in the country. And then when Joe Biden was sworn in on January 20th, I don't say when he won, but when he was sworn in on January 20th, we changed the name of the PAC to the Committee to Defeat the President, because the last thing I want is for this administration, as we have seen over the last 7 months and how crazy they have been, the last thing I want is for their administration to be successful in pushing their radical leftist agenda down the throats of America. So my PAC and we've been one of the most aggressive organizations out there to push back against the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and do everything that we can to save our country.
Now, you're a very savvy guy, so you clearly see what's going on here. And there are so many people who are completely blind to the fact that there are red herrings everywhere, just trying to take our minds off what the real issue is, and that is the goal of power and control by the political left. And there are too many sheep and not enough leaders, unfortunately, right now. But we're seeing a lot of conservatives like yourself and just us rank and file citizens, even us little old radio show hosts here, are starting to get a voice and get involved. And what we're seeing come out of the Biden administration is nothing short of alarming, with all of the things they're doing, from the open borders to the ruining of our infrastructure by making us oil dependent while China continues to chug along just as strong as ever, all because of John Kerry and the big, the Great Reset and the Paris Climate Accord. And now you've got AOC. You probably have read this. I just read it this morning. AOC, Ayanna Pressley, not Ilhan Omar, but Rashida Tlaib, AOC, and Ayanna Pressley, along with a couple of others, have signed a letter saying they want the Federal Reserve Chair to be focused more on climate change, social and racial justice. So,
and they're probably they are leading their effort. I mean, they have pushed the agenda since the day Biden won. If he ever tries to go off script and do something that is a little more moderate, the squad jumps all over him, and he runs back into the corner and tries to, get into the fetal position, say, "Don't hit me anymore." And that is, they are literally the leaders of this country right now. And that is why my PAC is so aggressively pushing back. And I mean, you look at what this administration is doing, and I don't say it's Biden himself. I don't believe he's running the country.
Right.
I believe that there are much more powerful forces at play in the administration, and they are radical leftist, tyrannical dictators. And you look at what they're doing with mandating this injection into our military. They're forcing businesses to require that their employees get the injection. And it is all over control. To go back to your very first sentence, this is all about controlling you and me and making sure that we don't have the constitutional freedoms and protections that are guaranteed to us in the Constitution. And whether it is opening up our borders, whether it is forcing vaccines on us, whether it is abandoning our troops and our civil servants on the ground in Afghanistan, this administration is pushing the most radical leftist agenda that you can possibly imagine. And the American people, thankfully, I believe, are rising up to push it back. And I think 2022 is going to be a watershed year for the American people.
Absolutely. Well, I love the fact that we're seeing people who would never have thought about speaking in public, getting up at school board meetings, at council meetings, and they are letting them have it when it comes to the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the critical race theory, the gender theory, everything. They're letting them have it. What is it going to take to make change? Now, here's the thing, Ted, that I was saying this morning, and you're in a better position to tell me if I'm way off base or if there's a modicum of correctness in what I say. But I asked a rhetorical question of listeners. I said, how many conservatives is it going to take to make change that we want to see in America? Change the way we should be living, with freedom, with liberty, with individual control, everybody with the same possibility, not the same outcomes, but the same potential outcomes, the same opportunities. It takes all of us working together, but it seems to only, and I point to the founder or the author of the 1619 Project, it only takes one of them to start a movement that seems to just suck all the air out of the room.
Well, I teach a political leadership class with the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. And what we teach is that it takes 3%. It was not 3%. It was not 50% of the colonists in the beginning of our country who said, let's go take on the strongest military on the face of the earth. It was 3% of the colonists that worked together all across all 13 colonies, and they started communicating together. They started mobilizing. They started educating each other, and they rose up an army of revolutionaries that took their country and gave us the greatest blessing any country has ever given the world. And that's what I keep telling conservative activists across the country, is we need to start mobilizing and identifying and organizing together to where we have the ability to pressure politicians. Because right now, there's a small sliver of America, radical leftists, that are electing these radical leftists that we just talked about with the squad, and they are dictating the future of our country. We have to start a revolution at the grassroots of the conservative movement and mobilize and coordinate and get together. And it just has to be a small number of people, 3%. And when you start to get that 3% to say, we will throw you out of office if you don't do what we tell you to do, that's when the politicians start to listen to us, because they know that the majority of people don't vote. And then the majority of people just vote party line, so the politicians don't have to listen to them. But it's those people in the middle, that 3% in the middle, that will say, we will throw you out of office, whether you are a Republican or whether you are a Democrat, if you don't do what we tell you to do. And there's about 17 Republicans in the United States Senate that passed this infrastructure bill and passed a lot of this other crap, that we need to be primarying them and getting them out of office, and we need to take back our country. Until we clean our own house, until we have discipline at home, we're not going to be able to take back our country. And that begins with having a few Republican skins on the wall as well.
You're absolutely right about that. We're talking with Ted Harvey, former Colorado state representative, president, or rather chair. I don't know if they're interchangeable. Chairman of the chairman of a committee to defeat the president PAC, now aimed at Joe Biden, where it should be. Now, I wonder about this. There have been calls by Kevin McCarthy, for example, calling or bringing up possible impeachment of Joe Biden. But, you know, is this not a double-edged sword? I mean, look what we're left with if Joe Biden gets impeached or is 25th.
Yeah, and that's going nowhere. That's just that is grandstanding, in my opinion, by the minority leader. The president has not done anything illegal. He's done things incredibly immoral, and I believe that he should not get reelected. But there's no way we're going to impeach the president. Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House. She is not going to allow an impeachment effort to move forward. That's simply grandstanding by the minority leader and from Lindsey Graham. They need to just start doing their job, and they need to start mobilizing grassroots conservatives across the country to win elections in 2022. Do I believe that we need to get to a point where Joe Biden steps before the American people behind the Resolute desk on a national broadcast and do what LBJ did and say that I will not seek nor will I accept the nomination of my party? Absolutely, because what happened in Afghanistan is far worse than what happened in Saigon. And this president should not be reelected, and nobody in this administration should stay in place moving forward. And that goes for the Secretary of Defense, that goes for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that goes for Jake Sullivan, who is the Director of National Intelligence. All of them have failed not only the men and women in uniform, but they have failed all of the civil servant employees that are on the ground in our embassies, in our embassy in Kabul. We have done an incredible disservice to the honor of America and to our allies that are there. And nobody at the top of this administration should still be there. This president should fire them all, yet they are all still there. And the American people need to be rising up across this country and making sure that the Democrats never have this much power again.
It's unbelievable. And you talk about Afghanistan. This was a debacle that didn't need to happen. We lost 13 of our finest. 11 male soldiers. No, 11 male soldiers and 2 female soldiers. One of them, Gee, and Nicole Gee.
Yep.
You saw her in that Instagram picture, swaddling a little Afghan baby, saying, "I love my job." And days later, she's killed by the Taliban. What goes through your mind? What would Donald Trump, do you think, Ted, have done differently? And I think I've got some ideas, but I'd like to hear what you think.
Well, my brother is a 30-year career civil or foreign service officer. He is in Tajikistan, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq. He said 3 months ago that if we did not get our foreign service officers off the ground 3 months ago, we would be pulling them off the top of an embassy with a helicopter by August 15th. And almost literally to the day, that is what happened, because everybody knew how this needed to play out. 3 months ago, you get all of the U.S. Civil servants, foreign service officers off the ground, out of country, and get them out of harm's way well before you start pulling back the military. You hold Bagram Air Force Base until the very last minute, because that's where you need to have your forward air support to be able to fight back against the Taliban as you're moving the military out. And then at the very last, you're blowing up all of our arms, all of our munitions, all of our helicopters, everything that is in country, and shredding everything that is in the embassy and making sure that none of that secret information is going out. And then at the very last minute, that's when you pull the troops out. This administration did just the opposite of
Bingo.
everything that I just outlined. And I guarantee you, Donald Trump and the Trump administration, my brother was part of the Trump administration for foreign policy, this never would have happened under the Trump administration. They would have rolled it out the way we have learned over the last 60 years how to leave a place of conflict. And this administration did just the opposite of what we have learned for decades and decades. And like I said, all of those people at the top of this administration need to be held accountable for this outrageous, dangerous, ridiculous thing that just happened in Afghanistan.
Unbelievable. You're right. They did it completely backwards. And Joe Biden said the buck stops here. And others in the administration, even Democrats, are blaming Joe Biden himself for the apparent rogue debacle. But General Milley, General Austin, I mean, they have some responsibility here, right? In fact, there's a letter that has come out from a bunch of generals and admirals calling for their resignations.
The fact that they haven't resigned at this point in disgrace and humiliation just tells you where their ego is. This has nothing to do with what is best for America, what is best for the men and women in our armed services. This is what's best for these 2 or 3 or 4 individuals, and they are shameless. But again, they're more concerned about their woke policies of pushing CRT down the throats of our military servicemen and injecting them with a drug, not a vaccine, that is not going to solve the virus issue, and they're worried about gay and lesbian rights rather than focusing on saving the lives of our military personnel on the ground in Afghanistan. And that tells you where the woke side of our country, the socialist woke side of our government is right now. It's not about merit. It's not about doing what is right. It's about pushing their liberal agenda at all costs. And it's causing, so far, 13 people in our armed services to die.
Amen. And you're right. I mean, the other thing, the one thing that just irks me that you didn't mention there, when it comes to what they're doing, Joe Biden has also offered to pay for gender reassignment surgery to transgender people who enter the military. So do we want the best of the best, or do we want as many people as we can get to make us look like a more inclusive Army, as opposed to a more resilient and a more able to defend us Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines?
Well, we have probably the most diverse military there is on the face of the earth. And it's probably the most diverse part of our culture of any area in our culture. You look at the number of women that are at the highest ranks of our military. You look at the number of minorities at the highest ranks of our military. I mean, Colin Powell, whatever it's been now, 15 years now, was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's all based on merit. Doesn't matter what your color is, doesn't matter what your gender is. If you meet these requirements and you excel and you focus and you put your nose to the grindstone, you can go to the very top of our military. And that's the way all of our society should be. Yet that's not what the left wants. The left wants us to think that our military is racist, that our military needs to be fixed, that our military is transphobic. You know, name all of the key buzzwords that the left comes out with. It has nothing to do with any of that. If you are working hard and you are a bright individual, it doesn't matter sex, color, gender, whatever, you're going to rise to the top in our military, and that's the way it should be. And we should be defending our country, defending our civil servants that are on the ground around the world, and our allies. It shouldn't matter about this woke agenda.
So shouldn't there be consequences for what they're doing, in that they are literally at home and abroad with the military now? Was it, I think it was Lloyd Austin that said the military needed to stand down so they could weed out racism and everything else.
That's right.
And then you've got the defund the police, get rid of ICE movement in this country. And yet you've got all of these politicians calling for these things who took an oath of office that promised to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. And they're taking away our protectors as they sit there untouched, unscathed, uncriticized by mainstream media or anybody else on the left and many on the right. And they're getting away with it. Should there not be some kind of and I know the ballot box is a consequence, but when you've got elections that just seem to, I don't know, get stolen, it's hard to even count on that anymore. And now, if you are for election reform in the sense that we need voter ID, that we don't want people getting in your face at the polls to do campaigning, we're called racist.
Well,
sometimes Ted,
the American people have to ask themselves, why is it that the left does not want us to be protected? Why do they not want to have sovereign borders? Why do they not want to have police? Why do they not want to have the most effective military on the face of the earth? That's an interesting question. I would love to know the psychology of a leftist who thinks that America should be less than the best. Do they want us to look like the Afghan government that literally ran away because they didn't have the power to be able to defend themselves? Do they want us to look like the war-torn countries in South America that are being overrun by the drug cartel? That is what the result of having a weak military, having no sovereign borders, and having a weak defunded police force is.
Right.
And we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the Democrats want us to be a weak country? And I think it is they don't want us to be exceptional. They don't want us to be able to show the rest of the world that we are the last best hope for mankind. They want us to bring us down to a level playing field with all of the other failed socialist governments around there, because it's not fair that these failed socialist governments aren't as successful as a free market, free people, capitalistic government society. But in the end, it's ironic that these very same people are hiring security staff that have guns that are able to protect themselves when they say that you and I shouldn't have government guns and protection. And at the very least, we shouldn't have the Second Amendment and be able to defend ourselves with our own guns. The irony is not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on anybody else.
Absolutely. Well, Cori Bush herself said, it doesn't matter if I spend $75,000 on security. I need it because I need to be here to fight for you. I've also got a piece here. If you would be so kind to indulge me for just a second. I aired this yesterday, and I've just got to find it here real quick. It was an interview with, and I forget the woman. Well, I'll tell you what, I will look for it here. It was Al Sharpton, and he had a guest on. I don't know if you caught the interview on MSNBC. Basically, this civil rights attorney, female rights attorney, told Al Sharpton that abortion is a constitutional right and that the Second Amendment does not guarantee the right to bear arms. And I did one of these things.
This is a civil rights attorney.
Yeah, exactly.
Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that abortion is a right. That's like saying slavery is a right, that
exactly.
slaveholders have a right to own slaves. So that's not in the Constitution either. But yet they are equivalent. If you say that you have a right to kill somebody because they're your child, then that's essentially what slaveholders were saying, is I have a right to own, I have a right to whip, I have a right to dismember my slaves because I own them. Right. Nobody owns an individual. We have civil rights that are given to us by God. And that is why government is there in the first place, is to protect the civil liberties of our citizens, period. That's why we have a military. That's why we have a police. Pretty much anything above and beyond that is just a contract with the citizens to provide other services. But at the very basis of why government exists, it is to protect the civil liberties of each individual citizen within the borders. But that is where the left is. They don't believe in civil liberties anymore. They built their whole movement on civil liberties, but when it comes down to it, what they really mean is we want to have control of you and what you do and what your kids do and what you do with your kids. Beyond that, if we don't have control, then the system doesn't work. And that's where the Democrats are. I want government as minimalistic as possible. Amen. And allow me the freedoms to be able to pursue my basic human rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And beyond that, get out of my way and stop oppressing me.
Oh, man, I love you, Ted. I love you, man. I'm telling you, you're right. Just don't infringe on my rights. I don't care what you do. If you're a transgender, if you want to marry the person you love, whatever they identify, I don't care if it doesn't affect my rights. Right? Is that
my civil liberties, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Amen. I've got that piece. You want to hear it? just in case you haven't. I love this piece. This is her name is Jill Collin Jefferson, a civil rights attorney, and she is on with Al Sharpton, and this is on Politics Nation, that great Al Sharpton show that's on every Saturday. Here's the piece.
Attorney Jefferson, as we talk about civil and human rights in Mississippi, I want to mention the Supreme Court is set to hear arguments about a currently blocked state law that would ban all abortions after 15 weeks. And so the heavenly poor, young, and black women who stand to lose access to the only abortion clinic in the state sounds as much about civil rights as abortion rights to me. What are your thoughts, Counsel?
Yes, this is a matter of civil rights. Having the right to an abortion is a constitutional right. It's grounded in the right to privacy that is within the Constitution. And I find it really interesting that part of this argument is an argument about, the right to an abortion is not explicitly listed in the Constitution. But you know what? Neither is the right to bear arms. That the way that we interpret that law is the interpretation of a constitutional provision, the Second Amendment. In this, we are interpreting another constitutional provision, yet we're not applying that same logic to this situation. What it reminds me of, quite honestly, is a suicide bomber, someone who feels like they have the right and the moral duty to
for the greater good. There you go. There's a nice Marxist phrase for you. What do you think? So we've got these people who are trying to divide us and trying to interpret the Constitution the way they want to interpret it. Have you ever heard anything that brainless?
Well, I'm trying to follow her logic. She says that the right to privacy is enshrined in the Constitution. I actually don't see it anywhere written in the Constitution. Those words, privacy, are not in the Constitution. However, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed is in the Constitution.
Right there. It's right there.
Having said that, I do believe we have a right to privacy, but abortion is not one of those rights. And for Sharpton to be saying that this is a discriminatory effort by those who want to protect human life, it was Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who pushed for abortion rights to eliminate the African-American population in America. And that is what is racist. To say that we should not be aborting little black boys and girls, like the Reverend, and I put that in quotes, Al Sharpton would suggest. Al Sharpton is the racist. He's the genocidal proponent and propagandist for the genocide of his own people, and that is what I am fighting against. Is that genocide? Because I don't believe that anybody owns anybody and should have the ability to murder them simply because they are in your womb. It is a separate individual entity and needs to, that's why government exists, is to protect each individual separate entity's civil rights. And that is why it is incumbent upon us to protect those that are least able to protect themselves.
And they'll just tell you, well, it's not a human, it's a clump of cells. It's murder. The trajectory is set at the moment of fertilization. The trajectory is set. You have started a real human being.
It is a real human being. It doesn't matter whether it's at 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, or right at conception. It is a human being, and it has civil rights that need to be protected by government, just like you deserve your civil rights protected, or I do.
Right. Former Colorado Representative Ted Harvey, Committee to Defeat the President PAC. Wow. We could. I don't know if you're on a clock or anything else, or if you want.
I'm great. I'm great.
We'll do a different subject. Climate change. What is going on with climate change? I mean, we have, as I think I mentioned earlier, that AOC and Tlaib and Presley are on this kick now. When the Federal Reserve Chairman gets replaced, they want somebody who's going to address climate change, social justice, and racial justice. Hello. This whole thing about climate change, I've read enough books. I'm reading one now by Michael Schellenberger called Apocalypse Never. He's a climate activist and says they're full of it. Why are people so quick to say, well, it's a sign? Even Chuck Todd, the most dangerous man on news on NBC, says the science is settled. It's not settled. How do we convince people? People are following all of these red herrings. How do we convince them of the truth when they are such lemmings, shills, whatever you want to call them?
Ideologues.
Yeah.
It all goes back to controlling you and me and our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what it comes down to, is they want to have government have the ability to tell you and me what to do with our lives. I have a master's in environmental law and science and policy, and it's something that I am very, very passionate about and very well versed in. I guarantee you, I know environmental policy far better than Chuck Todd does. I actually own 2 Priuses. I am a conservationist and an environmentalist. I'm very passionate about it.
God bless America.
We should do everything we possibly can to clean our environment as much as we possibly can, clean our water and our air and our land as much as we possibly can, and use modern technology to the best of our ability. And the United States is excelling in that beyond any other nation ever on the face of the earth, because we have a free market system that encourages innovation and encourages the production of these kind of technologies that do clean our environment. And we should be proud of that, and we should be trumpeting it from the highest mountaintop. Having said all of that, nothing that man has done has created global warming. Global warming and cooling has occurred since the beginning of time, and there is nothing man has done to cause it, and there is nothing man can do to change it. And I can give you Life magazine and Time magazine covers for the last 100 years that are saying we're going into an ice age, we're going into global warming, and we're going to burn up. That it's constantly like this. Whenever the left can find a way to push an agenda to control you and me, they're going to do it. And they come up with this hysteria whenever the opportunity presents itself, because we're in a global cooling time or a global warming time. And these things happen throughout the history of Earth. And you and I are not powerful enough to create that global change. And we're not going to be able to change it with technology either. Yet they are going to push us to tell us that we have to lower our emissions by a certain amount of time and destroy our economy and put us back into literally back to the founding of our country, because when we were in a horse and buggies. And that's still not going to change God's ability to affect the environment. So I'm not denying the fact that our Earth was warming for 20 or 30 years prior to this century. However, since then, it's been cooling, and it is continuing to cool, and it has nothing to do with the 2 Priuses that I own. It happens to do with the fact that our Earth goes through these times in history where it cools and it heats, and it's not my 2 Priuses that have brought it down in the last 10 years.
God bless you for driving Priuses. If I could afford a vehicle and it made sense for me, I love the electric engines. I got an electric lawnmower. I love it. I love this thing. It's got torque, it's got power, and it's quiet. I love it. And if I could get a car that was affordable and I could fill it up in, I don't know, how long does it take to fill up a car? 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe? How long does it take to charge a Prius? Now, if we fill the roads with electric vehicles, which Joe would like to do and the rest would like to do, how long are we going to be sitting in line to fill her up?
Well, no more than I do in my Honda CR-V that I own as well. It is what it is, that you do have to fill up a means of transportation with whatever energy source you're going to use. But again, the government, the left, wants government to tell us that you and I have to be driving Teslas rather than whatever, Mustang that we want to drive, whatever it is that we want to drive. That's not the role of government, and they're using it as an excuse. They're using global warming as an excuse to tell us how to live our lives. Right. And there's no science to back up their justification for why they are trying to control us. I mean, just go back and watch Al Gore's video that he did. When did he leave office? 1998.
Not soon enough.
Lose track of when he left office, but he came out and he got out and he did his famous video, and nothing that he claimed in that video has come to pass. It is an absolute joke. Yet they built this entire movement to control you and me.
Absolutely. The polar bears never went. The polar bears are thriving, Ted.
And Miami's not underwater.
It's not. It's still a great place to go. And neither is a Martha's Vineyard where Obama bought his $15 million mansion or however much it cost. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, we went from global cooling in the 60s and 70s to global warming in the 90s to climate change because it sort of plateaued. And it just, nobody sees this, I guess. Nobody is apparently, they say they're woke, but they aren't woke enough to see what's going on before their eyes. And that's kind of scary that we have people that ignorant and that willing to follow what the government says so easily.
Well, it's also the fact that the average person out there is not getting the truth about what is going on, whether it is the coronavirus or whether it is global warming or whether it is the failure of this administration in Afghanistan. If you are not towing the government line, and the government line being the socialist agenda, then you're going to be canceled on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram or any place else that is the modern day public square where we're supposed to be allowed to express ourselves and have freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and discuss things that are going on, and everybody contributes to the conversation. Then we try to come up with what's best for society. That is not allowed in America right now. We are being shunned if you do not toe the party line, and that is a dangerous place where our country, where our world is right now, that if you are a scientist and you are coming forward with an alternative position, scientific position, you are canceled. That's going to lead to tyranny. And I think that's where we are as a world right now, is the globalist, tyrannical globalists are shutting down free speech because they don't want to have anybody come up against them and where their agenda is taking the world.
Right. But I mean, we're not too late. We certainly can get a hold of this. And I think as technology continues to progress, I think Twitter and Facebook and all these others are either going to have to start, they're going to have to start moderating things a little bit better, or they're just going to lose market share because, the free people will not stand for this. And getting back to Afghanistan, before we let you go, and thank you so much, Ted, for staying. This is, by the way, this is Ted Harvey. Thank you so much for staying overtime with me here. What do you think the next move should be or might be in Afghanistan? Clearly, the military should have come out last. I mean, we can talk about that all day long. As Donald Trump said on Hannity the other night, a child could have figured that out. But of course, we have somebody without, I don't think, the mental acuity of a child in office right now who made the decision. But what do you think our next step should be to assure the rest of the Americans get out and there is some modicum of safety for the Afghani women who now have to live under Taliban rule?
Well, I don't think we'll ever be able to provide safety for the Afghanistan women. I don't think that's our boys and girls' responsibility to do that. I believe that's the men and on the ground that are Afghanis that need to be protecting their women. Having said that, if it requires us to go back in with 10,000 troops to get out 20,000 U.S. civil servant personnel, we need to do that. And we need to tell the Taliban, we will crush you and we will destroy you, and you will never have any, you will not have another breath on this earth if you try to limit our ability to get our people out of there. And it shouldn't have come to that. We should have gotten them out 3 months ago, like I said. But the fact that this administration has screwed this up so desperately, that's the only option we have right now, is to go in there with full force and get our people out of there immediately and destroy the Taliban if they try to get in our way. But that's not what I want. I don't want us to ever be in Afghanistan after we killed Osama bin Laden. That's the reason why we went there. We didn't go there to build a democracy. We didn't go there to nation build. Yet Republican administration and Democrat administration alike has continued to put our men and women at risk. And what we're seeing today over the last week is a result of that foolhardy effort by multiple administrations that put us in this situation. Trump had got us down to about 3,000 troops and not one person killed over the last year in an effort to meticulously get us out of there. And the Joe Biden administration destroyed everything that the Trump administration had been working for the last 4 years.
Absolutely. I don't think Joe Biden has ever been a part of any kind of foreign policy discussion or event that he hasn't screwed up. He wasn't for I keep wanting to say Obama. It was the Obama administration, the bin Laden. He wasn't for the bin Laden attack and killing of bin Laden. I understand that particular mission.
Well, I fully support killing bin Laden, and I fully support going in there and doing what we did at the very beginning to root out the Taliban and to find bin Laden to take him out. But once that was done, that was our mission, and it shouldn't have taken us 20 years to get to a point where now we're leaving. We knew. I was in ROTC when I was in college, and that's military training 101. Go in with full force, know what your objective is, and know how you're going to exit. Unfortunately, the Bush administration never understood what their number one goal was or how they were going to, what their exit plan was. And what resulted is us going in full force without having any knowledge of what our end game was. You're not going to be able to build a new government, a new country in Afghanistan. They're a very dispersed, desperate group of people groups all across the country. You're not going to unite them. You haven't been able to unite them for thousands of years. Why do we think the United States is going to do that? And then okay, so you're not going to be able to do that. So how are we going to get out? And the Bush administration never told the American people and never told Congress what their exit plan was once they achieved their objective, because they never had an achievable objective. And that's why we are where we are today. And I do thank God for Trump, for bringing down the troops and getting us out of there. I just believe we should have gotten out all of our U.S. civil service personnel 3 months ago, before the military was anywhere close to getting out, and certainly before we got out of the Bagram Air Force Base.
Of course. You're a good man. You're a very good man, Ted Harvey, and I really, really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your knowledge. I thank you and your brother for your service, and I hope we can have you back again. Is there anything else you think we should cover that I have missed that's important?
Yeah, real quick. I want people to have hope. I want people to understand that we're still a republic. God is still on the throne. And as Donald Trump says, the best is yet to come. I don't believe God is done with America yet. And we are the bosses in this country. We are the ones that elect our employees to do what we want them to do. And in November of 2022, we have a great opportunity to take back our country. We're only down by 5 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I believe just with redistricting and people fleeing from California and Michigan and New York, those states are going to lose seats, and Texas and Florida and Alabama and other red states are going to be picking up seats. So I think just with redistricting, we are going to take back the House of Representatives. But I think it's also going to be a huge landslide victory, not just 5 seats, but I think we're going to pick up 10 to maybe 20 seats in the House, and we will have a huge majority. But they have to be conservatives, not just Republicans. They have to be conservatives. But I also think we can take back the Senate. We're only down, we're in an even 50-50 Senate right now. We only need to pick up 1 seat to win. And Herschel Walker announced in Georgia this week, and I think Herschel Walker is an amazing individual. He's a legend in Georgia, and I think he's going to win that seat. So I think we're going to take back the Senate as well. So just right there, if we can take back the House and the Senate, we are going to slow down this administration and the radical left immensely, and then take us into 2024. And I don't see any Democrat on the horizon that's going to be able to win in nationwide in 2024. 40 states across the country have implemented pretty significant election reform laws since November. And that 40 states have voter ID laws in place that you have to show a voter ID to be able to vote now. And that's going to have a huge impact on the Democrats' ability to cheat and steal going into the 2022 elections and the 2024 elections. And so have hope. I believe that we can take our country back, but it's going to take a very strong, well-organized effort by the grassroots. And that's what my PAC is there for. So if you guys want to participate in our efforts, go to our website, stopjoe.com. Look at all the stuff that we've been doing, the TV commercials that we've been running. And if you want to help us financially, hit that donation page and help us out. Our average contribution is about $40 a contributor, and we raised over $20 million in the last election cycle. So that's a lot of grassroots, God-fearing patriots that have been supporting us. And if you guys want to help us, please do so. Go to stopjoe.com.
Stopjoe.com. I like the sound of that. And God bless you, Ted.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Ted Harvey, Committee to Defeat the President, stopjoe.com, Committee to Defeat the President PAC, and former Colorado. How do you feel about the chances of Larry Elder in California? We have this recall coming up with Gavin Newsom. And I keep thinking of things I want to ask you.
Well, I think it'll be huge. I think that there are enough people that will vote in a special recall election to recall Governor Newsom. And that will be earth-shattering for the Democrat Party to lose. I mean, right on the heels of losing Cuomo in New York, they're also going to lose Newsom in California. And those two people were at the very top of the Democrat bench for future offices, for President of the United States. They had groomed them for decades to get them to where they are. Newsom is the nephew of Nancy Pelosi. To be able to pull the rug out from under him and eliminate him is huge. At the same time, you're pulling the rug out from under Cuomo in New York is huge. The Democrats have nobody left anywhere in the country that they can put up as a standard bearer to win an election. Having said that, to get a Republican elected, they just have to be the #1 vote getter of 100 candidates that are running. And I believe Elder is going to be the #1 vote getter. Even if he just gets 15% of the vote, I still think he's going to be the #1 vote getter. I think he's going to get more than that. But even if he just gets 15%, that still makes him governor. And for us to be putting up as the Republican Party in the 5th largest economy in the world, an African-American male to be the standard bearer for the Republican Party in California is going to throw out all of the Democrats' talking points that they've been beating up Republicans for decades. Right. And then you throw in Herschel Walker to be the standard bearer in Georgia, to be the first African-American senator to be elected in Georgia as a Republican. Those two things going into the 2022 election and the 2024 election is going to be devastating for the Democrats. So I throw out there to your listeners, have hope, because there's a lot of good things that are happening on the ground across this country for people of freedom and liberty.
Ted Harvey, thank you so much, sir. You're awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day and God bless.
God bless you. We'll talk to you again, I hope.
Definitely. Anytime.
See you, Ted. Bye-bye.
Thanks. God bless.